Hi, I'm Saren.
And I'm Ray.
We're your Spider Baby hosts from To Know Her Is to Fear Her, a Spider-Woman podcast, as well as proud members of the collective.
You're listening to Capes and Lunatics. Gimme, gimme.
This episode of Capes and Lunatics is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. Get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
To me, hearties, and welcome once again to Full Stream Ahead. I am your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz, welcome back. Okay, so tonight's episode, Season 1, Episode 2, WandaVision. Ooh, got a little cracky there. Little pitchy, dog, little pitchy.
Leave It to Beaver was... what decade?
Leave It to Beaver was the 50s.
Oh, it was.
This,
okay.
Yeah, this is much more 60s, and it's again.
What would be exemplary of like a 60s sitcom?
So a 60s sitcom would probably be, Mary Tyler Moore.
Okay.
So, or not Mary Tyler Moore. Actually, the Dick Van Dyke Show, and this is actually because a lot of these
other
sitcoms,
shows you can point to.
Well, the Bewitched, which is actually one they reference.
Okay.
Bewitched is 60s. I Dream of Jeannie is 60s, and the intro is very much of that era. So, and this is the thing, when we say about it's a 50s sitcom, it's a 60s sitcom, it's really a 50s to 60s sitcom, a 60s to 70s sitcom, next will be a 70s to 80s sitcom, gotcha. And then 80s to 90s sitcoms, and then of course they stopped making sitcoms, as we all know. I'm old. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, we might get. I mean, it would be really interesting if our fourth or fifth episode is literally called The Shield or The Sword, and it's just like, that single camera documentary style, and it's just all the agents sitting around saying, "Yeah, I don't know quite why we're doing this." It's a very interesting thing, That would be funny, because that would be like The Office, which came out in the 2000s, kids, because there are probably people listening to this series now who were not alive in the year 2000. So,
wow,
because I'm old. Okay, there's your drop, Phil. Anyway, let's get to talking about the episode. WandaVision, Season 1, Episode 2. In an effort to fit in, Wanda and Vision perform a magic act in their community talent show. Matt Shakman again, Matt Shakman is the director on this. So maybe he's the real genius. I don't know yet. Gretchen Enders did our writing, along, of course, with the series being created for television by Jack Schaefer. Ooh, they're not giving Stan and Roy their credits on this one, but, maybe they'll get to that eventually. Interestingly, this I think is the most interesting aspect of this, is that Teyonah Parris is in this episode and is called, she plays Geraldine in this episode.
But is she from
she is also playing, she's playing Monica Rambeau.
Right.
In the new movie. So we know she's Monica Rambeau, and if you cheat and go to the future IMDb, she is listed for episode 3 as Monica Rambeau, not Geraldine.
Oh.
So it's interesting that there's going to be something going on where there are times where she's listed as Geraldine / Monica Rambeau, and sometimes she's just listed as Monica Rambeau. So the next episode, it might be that Office, the Office episode where they're like, yeah, welcome to Sword. I'm Monica Rambeau, and maybe we'll get her origin and why she's there.
So she's kind of like Morpheus going into the Matrix to find Neo.
That is a very real possibility, which also would explain why she wasn't in the first episode. Oh, you know what we forgot to talk about last episode?
What?
And I am so shocked because I wanted to talk about it, but, I got distracted. The commercial for the Stark, what was it, Toastmates?
Right.
Toaster, like the perfect toaster that could toast cherry pie for some reason.
And meatloaf?
Well, if it's a combination toaster and toaster oven, that does make sense.
Yeah.
It did seem like it was a combination toaster and toaster oven. But what is important about it is that it has a timer and a beeper and is the only thing in color that we see. And in this episode, the commercial is for... And actually, I want to just make a quick point because the first time I heard it, I thought they said Star Technologies, thinking it might be a reference to Elias Starr, who is Egghead, who was the guy who built the quantum tunnel in Ant-Man and the Wasp after Pym's was shut down. After Pym said he wasn't going to do this anymore, Elias Starr went and did it on his own, and that's how his daughter got to be ghosted. But it wasn't. It was Stark, which was interesting because it does suggest that Stark Tech is still a part of this. And it goes into this episode where we again have, in our commercial, we have a timing device that is counting down. And this time it is a Strucker brand watch. Strucker, of course, for those who don't remember, is the Hydra leader who was using the Mind Stone to experiment on Wanda and Pietro and gave them their powers. So that he's using the Mind Stone to awaken them is an interesting aspect of this. And again, it goes to my idea that, if this is possibly the agents of S.W.O.R.D. trying to reach into what happened to the people who were decimated, it could be that, yes, we're using the same... We're going over the notes of Strucker and we're going over the notes of Stark to see what we can find. That that there may be even or it could be that these are people that were all influential in Wanda Maximoff's life. So when we think about the fact that she had this hatred of Stark, that's an interesting aspect. So if we remember Wanda's origin and why she hates Stark, it's because that bomb fell in the middle of her apartment building, killing her family, and her brother hid under her bed, watching this Stark bomb, waiting for it to go off. And now we see her imagining both a toaster waiting to go off that says Stark across the panel, and then Strucker counting down until she can have her revenge when she becomes the Scarlet Witch. It's a possibility. It's a thing. It's an idea. Something to consider as we're watching this. Because both of the commercials have those countdown motifs embedded in them. And Wanda's origin doesn't really have a countdown because obviously a bomb doesn't have a timer per se. It's not like it lands and then it ticks off until it explodes. But I can imagine a child sitting there looking at the bomb and thinking of the ticking clock and not wanting to move for fear it is going to explode. In this episode, and again, this is about this transition. So immediately, and this is one of the things about Agnes's character that I found most fascinating. Agnes as a character is much more a 60s housewife or a 60s next door neighbor or even a 70s next door neighbor than she ever was a 50s. So even when we were looking at her in the 50s episode where she says, 10 ways to goose your wife so you don't lose your wife, that was super risque for the 50s.
And the way she eyes down the mailman.
In this episode, too. Now,
right.
By the 60s, that gets a little more comfortable, but was still pretty risque. You don't get that kind of lasciviousness until at least the 70s. But it makes her an interesting concept, especially if we're looking at an Agatha Harkness kind of character who is an old woman in our modern era, but that also means she may have been a younger woman in the 60s. Now, of course, in the actual comic book, she was a younger woman in the 30s, which matches up timeline-wise. But she was always a bit of a beatnik. And, of course, the reference to Mr. Hart not liking the beatnickery of Phil Jones, because he wore the turtleneck, is a delightful little reference there. But it does show that Agnes is much more a free spirit, maybe even much more in control of herself in the simulation.
Oh.
Possibly because if she is Agatha Harkness, if she is an actual witch, she may be the one that is able to understand the world around her much more. She knows it's a simulation because they're in essentially, and again, this goes to the idea that if they're in the Soul Stone, if they're in it, what amounts to the Elysian Fields, then it is this idea that, I know this. I know how to navigate the Elysian Fields. I'm in the Elysian Fields. I'll always be in this dream state, but I can more adequately lucid dream myself in this moment.
Mm.
And perhaps that's why she sought out Wanda. Because when Wanda comes in, she's like, I realize you just moved in. I know you just came into this world. And I'm going to befriend you because I think there's going to be something that you can help me out with.
You think they're all, on some level, in that same space and just putting on a front to act like they belong, but they're all really like, how did we get here? That they're all a little unsure of their history?
Well, I think the idea is, and again, it's that Elysian Fields idea. Is like in the Elysian Fields, you forget everything. You forget who you are. You forget where you're from. You forget what exactly is going on.
But do you think they have like this deep-seated sort of intrinsic feeling that something is off?
Well, I think what it is, and this is maybe what it comes down to.
Or are they all part of the simulation?
So let's go with the Soul Stone theory.
Uh-huh.
If we operate within the Soul Stone theory, everything was fine until all of a sudden half the universe showed up.
Ah.
So everyone was dead and was just in their soul loops of whatever they saw the world to be. And then suddenly all of these beings that didn't really die, these living souls came in, and they're upsetting the balance of things. Is the idea that these living souls are the ones upsetting things for everyone because they don't know quite how to deal with that. They don't know quite what to do with these energies that they're not used to. It's a possibility. Or maybe it is...
In that way, it could be like they showed up in this weird, strange world where, everybody had magic and whatnot, but they realized that they were too afraid of it and they wanted to hold on to some modicum of familiarity, so they all engage in this practice of not using the powers that are afforded to them in this world, and they're trying to protect this worldview. And so that when Vision gets up there and they start doing these crazy tricks, that's really what's setting everybody off. It's like, wait a second, you're confronting us with the reality that we're in this thing, that we're not in the real world, but we want to put the blinders on. We want to all pretend that we're in the real world, so we're going to, measure.
That's a real possibility, yeah, that people just want to, how not to get too into the weeds on this, but how much do people like their fantasies? How much do people like the fact that they can, if this idea is, if the world is false, how do I carry on? You know?
Right.
That's the idea. It's like, I get the feeling, and again, we don't know yet. We're literally into 2 episodes, and I don't even have a consistent timeline yet. Is this post-snap? Is this post Agents? Is this in between the Return and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Where this fits, I don't know yet. But I think they're going to give us an answer eventually, hopefully. And it's going to be something really interesting that we said, I didn't even think of that.
Right, and all the postulating and pondering is going to pay off. It's going to be worth it. I trust that with them. They're good storytellers. They're not lazy storytellers. So I trust that.
Exactly.
You know what? It's interesting. This episode reminded me a lot of that episode of The Twilight Zone where the kid is performing a trick in his backyard for the town, and he makes he finds some special thing that he puts it on, and he makes his little brother disappear. And then he can never make him come back, and the whole town goes crazy looking for the kid, and he knows he did it, and he feels awful guilty, and yada, yada, yada. For some reason, it felt a lot like that episode.
Oh, wow. I've never actually seen that episode.
Really?
That is
a really good one.
Okay. Yeah, interesting enough, I saw there's an old Peanuts cartoon where actually Charlie Brown turns invisible. Oh. And, because Snoopy turns him invisible, because cartoons. But then he forgets to turn him back, and then he's like has to just use his magic throughout, and he actually gets to kick the football a couple times.
I was just gonna say yes. He finally gets.
He kicks it. Yeah, but at the last moment, like just before he's gonna really kick the football, Snoopy turns him back, and then Lucy pulls it away because that was Charles Schultz's rule. Charles Schultz's rule was Charlie Brown never gets to kick the football. And he never gets to kick the football because, sometimes in life you don't get to kick the football. Sometimes there's always going to be someone being a jerk to you. And you're just going to live with the fact that you got to keep on trying to kick the football even though the world is full of jerks that are always going to
No. But also it's a measure of keeping the audience wanting more, right? Mm-hmm. That's why Mulder and Scully could never get together.
Yeah. No, they got together.
I know, but they shouldn't have, and it was. I'm choosing to ignore that. The show worked when we wanted them to get together, and they never did. That's when it was at its best.
Yeah. Well, I think everything's always better when you can. Every story is better when you get to write it yourself, and I think that's probably some of the divisiveness with Wonder Woman is that. For those people who really enjoy that writing the movie, I know you don't like it. And that's fine. That's fine. But I think that for those that really do like the idea of, I'm going in, I want to watch a fun movie, and I want to write some stories into it. I'm going to make assumptions for it, because that's the kind of fan I am. They probably like it better. And I think critics reasonably, and yourself reasonably, dislike it for much the same reason that, it's sloppy storytelling. It's saying, here's a bunch of pieces. Why don't you guys put it together? Why don't you guys figure out what this story was about?
I didn't. That's not the sense I got, and that's not why I hated it. I think they didn't leave anything up to the imagination. They gave 2 simple answers to everything, and none of it made any sense. Like, they tried to give you an answer, but it just wasn't a satisfactory one. It was a really lazy one. That's what I thought. It wasn't that it was too inexplicable and that I had to put the pieces together. It's that the pieces were laid out, but they were, basically, cheap knockoff Legos from the dollar store.
Yeah, they weren't very good pieces.
Right.
Fair enough. And to be fair, I'm not going to argue with that point of view at all. I agree it was just not a well-written film. It just... I guess for me, it's that idea that, because I like poorly written films, I actually enjoy that. The bigger the mountain, the happier I am to get to the top.
Right. Because to you, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You enjoy a problem, you enjoy an equation, you enjoy, So
it's the challenge of making this not be a bad movie.
Right. To that, you enjoyed that aspect of it. I can dig that.
Yeah, and it was an effort in that. And I guess my biggest thing with Wonder Woman is that I actually thought the first one was awful too. So
I thought the ending was lackluster and a little rushed, and the CGI wasn't that great. But I think the ride helped me overlook the ending and a lot of the silliness.
And that's the difference between those movies. Like, to me, they're basically the same movie. It's like they just did this.
The action scenes
that's just my opinion.
Yeah, right. I'm just saying the action scenes were executed just as well. The choreography was maybe not so great. The bullet with the whip thing was a little much. But in the end, those action sequences in the first one mattered because we cared about all the characters. In this one, it was such a silly story that I couldn't find any real place to find any caring to apply to that. It was just like, crazy things are happening.
You got to bring a lot of Mandalorian love for Pedro Pascal into this film. It's basically, if you're willing to say, that's the Mandalorian, and I am not changing from that point of view, then you're like, I'm going to give you all the love I give the Mandalorian, Wonder Woman, for how you deal with Pedro Pascal. And so if you do that, then you're like, okay, I can work with this. It's like, once again, Marvel has to bring in and says, look, if you're going to use our people, you get a lot of good faith. So there are people that are going to come in and just say, Pedro Pascal's amazing. We want to keep it. We want to see him. Also, and it's almost kind of a weird, sad aspect that Pedro Pascal was actually in the Wonder Woman pilot with Adrian Palicki. I think he played the Steve Rogers role in that. Yes, so it's interesting that, it kind of ties together in a weird way. But, of course, since no one has seen that pilot, it was never really, widely released. There's no nostalgia to it, so I don't know what the thinking was, and I really think it was just because, that Mandalorian, he's the hottest name. Let's get him and get some good Mandalorian vibes into this movie. But anyway, we're not talking about that movie. We're talking about WandaVision. Where actually, again, you have to assemble so much of the story, but it works out so nicely. The food issue, which I liked. Because he says, I don't eat food. Now, of course, does anyone eat food? We don't know. But people are eating dishes. But when he actually consumes the gum to the work. Now, it's a funny thing because we see him drink wine at the end of the last episode. So he may not have eaten the food, but he did seem to drink the wine. Though he does make the point that it's just mastication, and it is just...
Hey, I don't do that.
Yes, the physical object in his body that is causing problems, but it's also weird that it would do that. But it gives you.
In that way, it's like in the world that they exist in. It's a fiction, not just a fictional world, but it's a fictional world as presented in that kind of show in the 60s, the 50s, whatever. So his internal makeup is that cartoon dialogue. That is the reality of the show. So the gum, he's not like. It's a projection of what Vision is, bled through the prism of this show. So in that version of him, in that representation of him, those are his inner workings. And they just magically, through the power of suggestion and the power of pure creation, that's the way everything, the outcomes that we expect from Vision to be able to do happen. But through these mechanisms, those are his mechanisms. And so the gum did gum up his works. I thought that's really, really interesting.
Yes. Anyway,
but the fact that he got drunk, and even then, I guess, it's whatever effects that gumming up the works have are up to the creator of the dreamer. So it can be anything, And
it works into the idea of, and again, to go back to Bewitched, the guy showing up drunk is a comedy trope they would explore. And the idea, because if you ever watch Bewitched, they are drinking all the time. They drink more than me. They come in and they're pouring themselves martinis. It's like they are the kings of day drinking on Bewitched. But then again, he's an advertising exec. In the 60s, it's Mad Men time.
Yep.
So, that's where that all comes from, that 3 martini lunch. And so the idea of him showing up in that drunken state, I think is very much a part of that, and very much the story they're trying to tell. And I think that's always the idea, is that they're trying to tell a certain story. They want to tell a story about, this universe with these rules, which is the idea that there are these rules, which gets me back to this idea that this is about evolving Vision. that they have to go through these steps. They have to push through each step to get to a point where Vision can evolve as a character, as a person.
It also feels like they're running from something, or that something's chasing them. You do get that sense like they just got here because they just had to leave somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, that is, and of course, this is the first episode where we really get the radio voice in this one, which also seems to pull Dottie out of her moment, which I found very interesting because, and she's like, "Why are you here? What is, who are you? What is this?"
She breaks out of that communal delusion to take a sidebar and say, "Hey, we got to keep up this delusion. Why are you messing with our delusion?" That's what she means to say, I think.
I know. But it's interesting that it's someone reaching out to her. But at the same time, when we get to the end with the big baby reveal, and this is all for the children, we get this idea that, someone is trying to reach out to Wanda, but maybe Wanda, because they ask who's doing this to you, Wanda,
right.
and maybe Wanda is doing it to herself, because in this realm she has found Vision, and she's trying to bring him back, and knows she can't bring him back until his programming is repaired fully. Mm-hmm. And that is the idea that we're looking at here.
So there's an entity. She isn't the only one that's in control. So, like, the fact that she's all of a sudden with child is done by some sort of entity that is recognizing the crowd speaking. It's all for the children. Oh, this is what you need to do to belong. Let's give her a child. So there's some other consciousness or some other impetus of
this goes to my secondary theory that puts Mephisto back into this. Because for those who forget, the reason Wanda had children was because when Franklin Richards fought Mephisto, Franklin Richards splintered Mephisto's essence, and part of his soul went into the babies that were created by Wanda and Vision. Huh. And this could be an attempt by Mephisto to reclaim the parts. This is my idea, that this is actually going to be the introduction, not of the mutants, but of the Fantastic Four. And it's going to be a retconned Fantastic Four where, we always were here. We didn't punch, Chitauri very much because, well, first off, we were off-world at the time dealing with Galactus, and we're explorers. We're not superheroes. We're not your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. We're out exploring the cosmos and the microverse and everything in between. That's what we do. And it wasn't public before because S.H.I.E.L.D. says, hey, don't make this public. And we're like, okay, give us $1 billion a year and we won't make it public. And they said, okay. And that's a fair cop, It's like, okay, we'll make our records, and then, we'll leak those out as they need to be leaked out to those other scientists who need to know things, when maybe they'll introduce the Illuminati in that. Who knows? But I get the feeling that they're going to be introducing the Fantastic Four and these characters through WandaVision, which is, of course, the kind of thing that no one is expecting. Because everyone's like, oh, this is where they introduce mutants. It's like, no, mutants already exist. Mutants were mentioned in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with Department H, which is why I do think this is going to have an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. tie-in. We may see Fitz and Simmons. Oh my gosh, that could be Simmons' hand. The white woman's hand at the end of the first episode, who's monitoring Wanda in this moment, that could be Simmons. We could get our Fitzsimmons scene back. So you watch for it, kids. I'm not going to mark my words on it, but I'm not going to be surprised if we don't see Fitz and Simmons at the end of this as part of whatever this plan is, reaching out to Wanda in whatever this universe is. So, yeah. That would be interesting. What's now I'm thinking about it, as I'm thinking back to that hand, it was a white lady hand in a black jumpsuit. It really, really, really very easily could have been Simmons' hand. Fitz might be retired, but maybe Simmons is still, keeping her hand in the till on this. Or maybe that's going to be Susan Storm. And we're going to get that Fantastic Four reveal at the end, and that voice on the other end of the radio is actually Reed Richards. Anything is possible. That's the thing to understand, is really anything is possible, and always trying to look for what is the easiest answer. Sometimes it works, but honestly, sometimes it goes in a completely different direction. Illusion and Glamour, it's interesting for their names, because of course he's Vision and then he's Illusion, and although that's actually, I guess, in the Vision and Scarlet Witch comic, they actually had a couple of neighbors named Illusion and Glamour, who were stage magicians, but they actually had superpowers, and that was their whole shtick, was they had real superpowers and they did stage magic, and that's how no one could figure out their tricks.
That's great.
Yes. And so that was a fun thing. Again, we're seeing Wanda have that Molecule Man level manipulation of the universe powers here, where she turns the piano into a cardboard cutout because she has complete control of this reality. She can alter it and change it as she needs to. And that is what's scary about her, including reversing time when something happens she doesn't like. And this is really revealing Elizabeth Olsen as an Omega level being, because it is like, no. Here's the idea. She is powered by the Infinity Stones, and then she was destroyed by the Infinity Stones, and then the Infinity Stones were destroyed, and now she has arguably all the powers of all the Infinity Stones, because her essence has been joined with everything. And now she is your Beyonder level character, and maybe it's going to take a Franklin Richards, another Beyonder level character, to bring her back to reality. And that would be amazing. And we're going to see these kids next, well, maybe not next episode, but soon we'll see the kids. Unless, like I said, next episode takes place outside of the framework, and we're going to get like these establishing shots of the universe, but we'll see what we're going to get. Any final thoughts on tonight's episode, Mozz?
One scene that I really enjoyed was that scene where, he first starts flying and everybody's sort of like, oh, what's happening? And she snaps her fingers and the rope appears. And what's interesting about that scene to me was that everybody saw what they saw. And then all of a sudden there's ropes, but they're so willing and so hoping to cling back to the world that they know, that they're willing to suspend. No, that must have always been there. I must have not seen it right. That aspect of it is really, really fascinating, and maybe speaks to sort of her efforts to bring him out, but he wants to keep blinding himself too.
Well, yeah, and I think they do that. They do that 3 times. First, when Phil Jones says that was my grandmother's piano,
right.
Immediately heard him saying, "I don't think that's how." I don't remember that being the reality. And then likewise, along those same ways, when the one woman says, is that how mirrors work? Because when he pushes the hat through himself. And again, what's funny is that, levitation, passing something, these are all actually pretty standard, like, sleight of hand magic tricks.
Yeah, and that's interesting.
They really aren't like, that he's a witch, burn him. That's really like, it's stage magic. I've seen this kind of stuff before.
But it's interesting to me that as long as you tell somebody there's a scientific or plausible reason for it, even if they don't understand it, they can go along with it. So just like that lady said, is that how mirrors work? And she's like, yeah, it's a trick. They're perfectly willing to compartmentalize it in their mind as something, as being real or explainable because somebody said it was. The mirrors were there. There was some sort of lot, even if they don't understand, as long as you give them or let them know there is a reason, people are fine.
Exactly. Oh, goodness. Another excellent episode to be honest. And I, for one, am excited about this show. I really am excited about the next episode, which unfortunately we don't get until Friday. And it is going to be a 1-episode drip drab going forward.
Not bad. Sometimes it's nice to have some time with
time with the ideas. But, it's... I just watched Disenchanted, the third season, which is like a half season, and it ended. I'm like so mad because it ends on such a cliffhanger, and it's really exciting. If you're watching Disenchanted, you might enjoy it. But yeah, it's a great episode. Any final thoughts? Well, I just asked you. You wanted to. Yeah, I just asked you the final thoughts. Don't mind me. I'm not all there.
It's all good.
I just got to say, one thing that
who's the beekeeper? Who's the beekeeper?
Well, so two things about the bee, because first off, these go back to those Mephisto references I was talking about. One of which is the bunny is named Senior Scratch. Or Senior Scratches.
Yeah.
Or Mr. Scratch, which is a pseudonym for the devil, and so is possibly a Mephisto reference.
Are there any beekeeper bee references to Mephisto at all?
Well, actually, beekeepers are a reference, of course, to AIM, who are always called the beekeepers because they wear the beekeeper hazmat suits. But actually, the real thing is we're assuming they're bees and not flies.
What would that
mean? The Lord of the Flies, Beelzebub.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's that maybe maybe it is an AIM scientist, but as he's traveling into this realm, he has to go through a place that is filled with flying insects, and that is the idea. What do you want to say, Tristan?
Maybe it's not AIM, but it's actually that bee guy, the villain made of.
Oh, Swarm. Well, fun fact: Swarm actually was a Nazi scientist who would have played around with Johann Schmidt and Hydra back in the day. So it is entirely possible we may get a Swarm reference before it's all said and done. He's a Nazi skeleton ghost who possesses bees. And he's all bees, basically. He's made of bees, and he sends bees to kill you all. Have they said that? Maybe that might be an Ultimate Universe thing.
No, actually, I think I'm getting it confused. Just in the Ultimate Spider-Man, he possessed
in Ultimate Spider-Man, they were mechanical bees. So.
Well, they weren't mechanical, but he was able to control mechanical.
Yeah. Anyway. Also gotta shout out that we see the Stark colors on the helicopter that keeps on flying into their house. The red and the gold. It has the shield, it has the sword logo, but the color scheme is clearly Stark. In fact, I think it might have even said Stark on the side of it. So
interesting.
And of course, again, to remember, Stark Industries as a company continues to exist despite the snap. That's the thing. Pepper lived. Tony lived too, but Pepper lived. Pepper was in charge of Stark Industries. Pepper may have said, yeah, let's go back to building bombs. It's good money, and, we'll just make sure we sell our bombs to good people. Because that was always what Stark was trying to do, was sell bombs to people that wouldn't blow up people
and
poorly.
Maybe he wasn't able to fight off the next in line, Obadiah, whatever his name was.
Yeah,
Stain?
Obadiah, Jebediah, all the Stains, yeah. There could be more Stains coming.
Or more people in that vein, people that just want to warm up.
Yeah. Well, not for nothing, as people have pointed out, Justin Hammer's still out there.
Right.
And if Hammer Tech has had bad PR, the best way to fix your bad PR is to buy a company that has good PR and then sell your products under that name. So we will see what happens. And we may even get into Alchemax eventually. We'll see what happens next. Anyway, Mozz, I hope you've enjoyed listening to this show. I hope you've enjoyed being a part of this show. I'm sorry, can you hear me? Mozz, I noticed you don't do this show with headphones, but people who are listening to this are listening to it on headphones, often cheap dollar store headphones that they paid $1 for because they got them at the dollar store. But the fact of the matter is, you can get high quality headphones at a fraction of retail costs by going to tweakedaudio.com using the coupon code Southgate at checkout and get a great discount on those high quality headphones. Likewise, use that same discount code again over at hunterkiller.com and get an escape room delivered to your house where you help Michelle Gray solve a cold case, and that's fun. again with that discount from the coupon code Southgate. Likewise, if you go into our show notes, you can click on what's that thing? Oh, the link. We have a link to Amazon.com where you can buy pretty much anything in the universe and have it delivered to your home. And it will cost you nothing to click on our link to go there, but it actually helps us because it lets them know that, hey, I heard these idiots and now I'm going to buy stuff. So go buy things from Amazon. And while you're there, check out Pod Life, the book, a book written by the Southgate Media Group crew for you that tells you why we are podcasters. And that comes in both digital form for your Kindle and a nice, solid, hard copy that you can keep when the zombie apocalypse comes. So you want good reading material in your bunker during the zombie apocalypse. Always remember that. And in the meantime, Mozz, if anyone does all that or they want to talk to you about the zombie apocalypse, how can they find you?
They can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And of course, if you'd like to write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our Mozz and Paz once did, do so at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. Of course, follow me on the Twitters at live tweet, a DuckTales, a woohoo. Mondays at 7, and what? Well, tomorrow, but we don't know when this will air. Mondays at 7, it's the final season. And then, if I can work it out, it's going to be Trickster. I want to start live tweeting Trickster, and possibly The Watch on BBC America. These are my life goals for 2021. Start live tweeting The Watch, which is cool. Live tweeting Trickster, which is cool. And live tweeting DuckTales, a woohoo. For you, my people, when I can. At Charlie Hesser, that's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Bing!
Thank you, Mozz. But thank you for listening to this show. All right, you landlubbers. You have listened to another episode of Full Stream Ahead. Thank you for docking with us, and come back next week as we sail these rocky shores once again. Arr!